Hello and welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jamar. Today's episode 183, and we're going to be interviewing Marty. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good.
You ready to rock and roll or what?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do this. Like I was telling you before, same question I start off with every time is tell me about your childhood and growing up. What was that like for you?
My name is Marty, and I'm an alcoholic and an addict. My childhood, I like to refer to it as a beaver cleaver childhood. I grew up in a little neighborhood and really had pretty normal, that's a bad word, pretty regular parents, I guess. My dad was a functioning alcoholic, went to work every day and came home and drank every night.
Was he a bad alcoholic? Like, was he nasty and angry? Or no,
No, he just
he just did his thing.
he was the typical functioning alcoholic. Like, I mean, he
Good
drank.
old fashioned man. Go to work hard,
Right.
come home, drink your scotch,
Yeah,
eat your
drink
steak.
hard, and I can remember when I was pretty young, like there would be days that he wouldn't come home, you know. And my mom and him would fight, and by the time I was 6 or 7 years old, they were getting divorced. And I don't remember him ever coming around again for a while, but my mom met another guy by
What
the
age
time
was this again? What age did he take
I
off?
was probably about 7.
7. Okay.
And then my mom had met another guy, and he was going to school to be a pharmacist, and so he was gone, during school, off to college. And my mom still got up, went to work every day, came home, did laundry, cooked dinner.
Was your mom young?
No, no, I mean, she was in her 20s when she had
Still
me.
very young. Still a baby, I think, in that age.
Yeah, she was, I would say mid 20s when she had me. And you know as my stepfather started to graduate school and was home more, we moved into a house, the house that I grew up in and they still live in today. um but it was my mom was, like I said, for a while she was a single mom, and she was tough, you know um very verbally abusive, physically abusive. But she grew up in an old school Italian family, so that's just how it was.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm
if there
Italian,
was,
so I know how
yeah,
that is.
yeah. So if there was the wooden spoon or the coat hanger or something close, you
The
got
wooden
it,
spoon,
right?
my grandmother used to be chasing
Yeah,
us around the house with the wooden spoon.
right. And that's just how it was. But I never, not it wasn't until many, many years later did I see how dysfunctional it really was. you know um Getting your ass beat on the daily was something that, like I said, I just thought that was normal. You just beat your kid's ass. And by the time I was 9 years old, I had an older brother who was almost 4 years older than me. And by the time I was 9, he was already partying. So, he was drinking and smoking weed and things like that. And so, of course, I try it, and my mom was at work, stepdad at school, and I drank a bunch of Jack Daniels. And my mom came home from work, and I don't know why I remember it so clearly, but she came home from work and thought that I had the flu. And so she took me to the hospital, and the doctor came out, and he told my mom, he said, your son is inebriated. And I didn't know what that word was, and I could tell by the look on my mom's eye, but whatever inebriated wasn't good. And so, of course, I got my ass kicked, you know. Well, I knew then that alcohol made me feel different. You know, it, it made me feel not afraid, you know, and
Were
you
you
know,
naturally a fearful kid?
well, you know, I didn't think so. I didn't think so. And this is stuff that I had explored in recovery that I dug deep and figured out, you know, why did I drink at 9 years old? You know, why by the time I was 14 was I sticking needles in my arm? You know, I didn't know that I was afraid. I didn't know that life was so complicated. I just thought it was what it was, you know, and you know, and like I said, by the time I was 14, you know, I'm sticking needles in my arm and I'm you know, rolling ounces of dope and taking it to school, selling joints, and I'm doing what big people do, you know, and all of my friends were older than me. You know, I was just living that life, you know,
You
and
were growing up fast.
yeah, really fast, you know, and it was like I didn't want once I had that freedom within my being that I didn't want nothing else. You know, I can remember being very young thinking, man, I'm gonna be 80 years old sitting on the porch getting loaded. You know, this is who I am. And, you know, and what came with all of that was different crimes and different things that I had to do to stay loaded. You know, I mean, like I said, I was selling dope by the time I was 14. By the time I was 16, I was headed to reform school. By the time I was 18, I was doing my first prison sentence. And
What happened that you got sent to reform school?
um, so so we ran around. There was a bunch of us that ran around. We were the hoodlums, and we would rob houses, you know, and feed our addiction. And they would have us in the newspapers and stuff trying to catch these guys. And one thing led to another, and we got caught, you know. And once we got caught, then, you know, our sentences were reform school, get your life together. This is how we're going to teach you.
What kind of addictions were you feeding? Because I know you started with the alcohol, you got hammered, you got sent to the doctor for thinking it was the flu. What other drugs and alcohol made their way into your life?
Um, like I said, by the time I was 14, I was shooting cocaine.
So it was cocaine.
Um,
Who'd you do? Who got you into cocaine?
just it was just a normal thing, you know, that came with the lifestyle that I led. You know, like I said, all of my friends were older. And so, you know, a friend of mine's uncle was selling me the weed. And then from there, it went to this friend's cousin had cocaine and we would tried it, you know, at a very young age. And then a couple of my buddies were shooting coke. And so they were like, you got to try this. And I'm like, I'm all for it. And, you know, and with that came heroin, acid, you know, I mean, you name it back then, excuse me, Dilaudid and things like that.
Let me
Whatever.
ask you a random question because I'm still up in the air about this. Did you find acid to be addictive?
Uh,
Because whenever I talk to people, most of the people say that they didn't find that or mushrooms addictive. For some reason, the hallucinogenics, there's some people, I mean, Bill W., I don't know if you know this, he actually experimented with LSD
oh yeah, for sure.
because he was trying, basically, what happened to him, what got him sober was he had a spiritual experience. And that's the one thing you heard from everyone that's ever taken acid. Oh, it's some, you know, it opens your eyes. And he was thinking if he could recreate that experience in alcoholics, they would be able to get sober. That was the thinking behind what he was doing.
Right,
Did you
right.
find it addictive?
You know, I don't know that I found it addictive, but then again, you know, I had books and books and books of of acid. I mean, we used to sit there and I mean, we'd go to parties and sell hits of acid, and it was nothing to eat 6 or 7 hits of window pane, I mean, but the next day it wasn't like, oh man, I'm going to take some more acid. The next day it was like, and I got to clear my head from this acid. So, I'll shoot some dope. And I don't think that I ever was like found the acid or the mushrooms addicting. They were fun. They were a break from everything else, but I don't think I ever was addicted to it. Like, I mean, I've told people today, why would you even want to do it? It's really not all that cool. Like
Yeah,
you laugh,
exactly.
you laugh a lot and then you're kind of sick and hungry, and it wasn't really all that cool, acid or mushrooms, but I did it because it was drugs.
Yeah.
Same with when heroin came around. I did it because it was drugs. I didn't like nodding off and being sick, but it was
You didn't get
drugs.
nervous? I was always so nervous to do heroin because I just knew I'd be dead. I'd be dead so fast. 'Cause I have such an addictive personality. Like I don't do anything half-assed.
Well, for me, like I said before, I assumed that getting loaded was just who I was. That was my life. That's, I mean, I lived and breathed to get loaded, the finding, the getting, the using. That's just who I was. So if somebody came up with some new shit, I was like, I'll try it. And, I literally was that guy that would put so much dope in their syringe that people would be like, are you going to do all of that? And I'm like, well, yeah, I can't fit any more in here. And I mean, people would leave because they didn't want to be there when I died. And, I just addicted. And still to this day, I have that addictive personality. I mean, if it changes the way I'm feeling, I'm doing it. I'm right now, I'm strung out on dirt bikes, because it's an adrenaline rush and I ride them as much as I can because it changes the way I'm feeling.
Anything that releases dopamine in the brain, it's a rewarding activity.
Right, right. I mean, it's a constant. I'm an addict, and just because I'm not using drugs or alcohol, I still find things that make me happy. Riding motorcycles, me and my wife out side by side and in the hills. I mean, things that change the way I feel. I'm doing it. I like that adrenaline rush.
And not only that, we do it hard. Like we go all out.
Yeah.
Like even with this, like if you think about it, I think I started this podcast, let's say 10 months ago. We're already at episode 183. Like I go all out. Like I try to do 3 every day I have off, or at least schedule 3. Every now and then one person cancels, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But this keeps me sober. That's all I care about.
Right. And that's the end game, right? Once you taste that sobriety and how good life really is, then you want to do more of what is keeping you sober, right? It's like shooting cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
You do that first shot and you're like, wow, why hadn't I done this all along? And then the little bit gets more and more, and it's same with my recovery, man. I am all in. And when I walked into the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, man, I was all in. I had been ever since I was 14 years old. I had been getting in trouble for this, child in need of supervision, shoplifting, blah blah blah, whatever. They would send me to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I would go in there and I would think, what a bunch of fucking losers, man. What a bunch of losers sitting around here telling each other all of your secrets. I was the type that, man, I'm going to lie until I die. I ain't admitting nothing. And I couldn't wait for that hour to be over so I could go get loaded. And little did I know that I was being prepared for the journey of a lifetime, man. You know, I had no idea when I went to prison the last time. I got out and I went just like I had several other times to see the parole officer, and she was giving me the rundown. You got to have a job, place to live, blah blah blah, and all of this. And but she never said one single thing about going to meetings. Never said it. And I was getting ready to leave, and I thought, man, this is going to be easy. I was getting ready to leave, and I thought, hey, do you want me to get those papers signed at meetings or anything? And she's just kind of looking at me and looking at my folder, which is about that thick. And she's like, nah, no, you can do whatever you want. She said, you can either get clean and sober, or you can get dead, or you can get locked up. It's up to you. You've been told what to do your entire life, and that ain't worked. And for whatever reason, that really resonated with me, really stuck with me. And I was walking out of her office, and there was those pamphlet racks sitting there. And I reached down and I grabbed a Narcotics Anonymous meeting schedule. And I left her office and I went to my first meeting of Narcotics Anonymous. And that was on June 14th, 2001. And I have not looked back. You know, they suggested that you go to 90 meetings in 90 days, and I tripled that. You know, I went to meetings morning, noon, and night.
Yes, we do everything hard. So let's go back a little bit, because you said you got in trouble fairly young. When was the first, you said, I think 18 was the first stint you did?
In adult penitentiary, yeah.
Adult penitentiary. What was that for?
So like I said, I was in that reform school, and buddy of mine would come up and he would drop us off like those old film containers full of weed, acid, whatever it may be. And I would go out and get it and sneak it back in. And then I was hustling in there. Well, there was 3 of us and we all got busted. And so instead of getting out on my release date when I turned 18, I got a ride to the penitentiary with another charge. So yeah, that was my first. And then I got out of that.
Were you nervous going into that's one of my biggest fears, and I'm always thinking what I would think. I guess I'm a selfish point of view, but I would be petrified.
Yeah, no, I wasn't at all. You know, when I got sent to reform school, there was probably 10 of my buddies that were already there. So I knew as soon as I got there that I was back with my crew. And a lot of them moved on to penitentiary. And so when I knew when I got there, they were there. You know, I knew the people, a lot of people that were going to be there. So I wasn't nervous at all. I didn't care. You know, like I said, that was just my life. That's how I lived.
That's what I say. Now, that's the definition of a dangerous person. The ones that don't care about jail. I said one time I was talking to someone, I go, what do you do with someone like Charles Manson, where he's been in jail half his life? So literally, that's all he knows. He's just as comfortable in prison as he is on the outside. So there's nothing to stop him from just doing whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I want to go beat the shit out of someone. My fear of jail will keep me from doing that. But when you have no fear of jail, it's just, oh, let's go.
Yeah, and that's where I was in life. I didn't care. I just it's who I was. It's how my DNA was arranged. You know, I did dope. I went to jail. I got out. I did dope. I went to jail. You know, I used to use county jail as like a little break when the dope stopped being so good. If I got like a 30-day sentence, then I could sit in county jail. And when I got out, that dope would be good again. You know, and I just didn't care, man. I didn't care where I ended up. I didn't care that I didn't have any family. I didn't care that, I mean, I had no responsibilities whatsoever. And so, you know, when I got out from my first time, I went right back to doing what I do, and I was out for about 3 years. I was there for about two. By the time I was 23, I, uh, I knew that I had a problem with cocaine. I knew that somehow like the cocaine was causing me all these issues. I'm maybe starting to mature a little bit, somewhat or whatever. So I had this cool plan that I was done doing cocaine. I was only going to sell it, but I was going to do meth because you could do half the amount of meth back in those days. You could do half the amount of meth and you didn't Jones as bad as like when you had the cocaine. So I had this big, huge plan, just going to do that. Well, like I said, by the time I was 23, I was sitting in my apartment and literally the both doors come flying off the hinges and all these guys in black suits and machine guns come in screaming at me to get on the floor. And I'm like, holy crap, and I'm laying on the floor and they stuck these papers underneath my nose and it said my name versus United States of America. And then it dawned on me. I have literally fucked up. It was no big deal to fight the state. It was no big deal to fight the county, but now I'm fighting a country. And how am I ever going to beat a country? And they convicted me conspiracy to possess and deliver methamphetamine, marijuana, and cocaine, and gave me a 9-year sentence. And so off to the federal prisons I go. And in that time, I was in 7 different penitentiaries.
Why'd you move so much?
As your security level raises or lowers, they move you. So if you're in, like I started out in a high security prison because I'd been in trouble since I was very young. As my level would drop, then they would move me to a medium. Well, then, I get in a fight or something like that, and then I'm go back up to a high and then down. And then finally, when I decided to play the rules, then I started dropping levels and finally got to a low security, and they gave me an option to do a drug treatment program inside the prison. It's called DAP. And if you complete that successfully, you get 6 months off your sentence. Well, you get a whole year, really. You get 6 months in a halfway house and then 6 months on home confinement. And I thought, if I can knock a year off this sentence, man, that's what I need to do. So, I took the classes and did what they wanted me to do. And I got out and I went to a halfway house and, life was good because it seemed like whenever there was some authority kind of pushing me where I need to be and this and that, I steered clear of getting loaded. So if I was on paper or if I was locked up, I wouldn't get loaded, because they just adds more time. I guess I learned that from reform school. And so when I got out of federal prison, I did pretty good for almost a year. And then I went back to doing what I do and tried the geographical things. And I ended up like realizing I'm starting to use cocaine again. I need to get out of here. So my dad was living in New Mexico, and I called him up and I said, "Hey man, is there any work down there? Can I come down there and go to work?" And he was like, "Yeah." And so I moved down there and I had about 3 years left on paper, and I was doing really well, and I got a great job running heavy equipment, and the guys would go drink beers after work. Well, through all of my drugging, I convinced myself that I was not an alcoholic. Like I could drink normally. So after work at night, we'd go to the bars and have some beers. And always, from day one of going to those bars, I was always scanning the room to see who was selling dope, because the alcohol wasn't what I was looking for. That wasn't my high. as I'm looking for the guys selling dope, I go over and I'm shooting pool and I strike up these conversations. Next thing you know, I'm getting high again. And I had at this time I only had about 4 months left on paper. Well, here's my thinking again. I'm a pretty smart dude. So if I just hide out for 4 months, I've given the feds 9 years of my life. If I just hide out for those 4 months, my number goes away. Well, about a month left into it, there's a note on my door that says, if you don't report by tomorrow, you'll be listed as an escape. And that will add 5 years to your time, mandatory minimum. So I thought, fuck, guess I better go see this guy. And I go in and I explained this same exact thing to him. Like, I thought if I just laid low, it would go away. And he said, I'm not going to give you a P test. He said, because I know you're dirty. He said, but you either go to rehab or you go do a violation. And I said, well, how long's the violation? He said, 11 months. And I said, well, fuck that. I'll go do the violation. I ain't going to no drug rehab. They never worked for me, obviously. And he said, just think about it, and this was on a Friday. He said, think about it and be back in here at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. So I leave there. I go get loaded all weekend long, but it's always in my head, like, what am I going to do? A 28-day rehab or 11-month violation, and somehow I pushed the convict and thug to the side and thought 28 days versus 11 months. It's a no brainer. Do the 28 days. So I went back and I said, I'll do the 28 days. And he said, I thought so. I've got a bed for you right now. And I said, no, hold on, wait a minute. I got to take care of some things before I go do a rehab. And he's like, no, you either go today or you go start your violation today, but you're going today. So I was like, okay. So left from the parole office straight to rehab. And on the 27th day, the United States Marshal showed up and arrested me. And I thought, this is why I'm always running from the law. This is why I'm always fighting this, because they're never true. Well, through all of that, some charges came about that somebody wore a wire on me. I had sold them some meth during this little probation thing. And so they arrested me and took me to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we fought it for a couple of months. I was in like a halfway house there fighting this. And they took me to court. And the judge said that, she said, you've given us 9 years of your life. I'm terminating your sentence. You're done. Go do what you're going to do. And I left, and it wasn't 3 weeks. And I had a plan. That, okay, I've done enough. I just did this rehab. I've been in and out pretty much my whole life. I'm done using. I'm done boozing. So I leave that halfway house, gather up my stuff. They only gave me 30 minutes to get my shit out of the halfway house. I head back to the town that I come from. And there was a guy first dude I ran into, and he owed me some money. And I said, listen, I'm getting my life together. And I'm not using no more. I'm not boozing no more. I got a job, but you owe me money and you're going to pay me. And he's like, I don't have no money. And I said, that's cool. Like I said, I got my shit together. So I need this surround sound system for my house. And if you go get it, then I'll call it even. And, what kind of thinking is that? Go steal for me because I'm getting my shit together. So I send him into Walmart and I go in with him. I show him the surround sound system. I leave. It seemed like an eternity, man. The dude never came out. I'm sitting out there in the truck waiting for him, and the doors fly open, and there's 2 cops. They said, are you Marty? And I said, yeah. They said, come with us. Took me into Walmart. We all know that little room off to the side where you see the cops coming in and out of. Take me in that little room, and the guy's sitting in a chair, and he turned around and looks at me, and they said, is this him? And he said, yeah. Well, he got caught stealing it and told him that I made him do it. And so I go to jail for conspiracy to shoplift. Now, I've been down for robberies, dope selling, I've been down for legit crimes, but conspiracy to shoplift, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. And so they take me to county jail. I get this public defender, and he comes in and he's like, listen, you're gonna have to plead guilty to this. I mean, you made him do it. And I was like, all right, so what am I looking at? And he said, well, they're also gonna hit you with a habitual offender. And I was like, well, I'm not pleading guilty then, let's fight it. And he was like, if you fight it, you're gonna go do some time. He said, but if you'll plead guilty to this crime, then you'll get 2 years, you'll be habitual, and you're done.
2 years in the pen?
Yeah, 2 years in a New Mexico State Penitentiary. And so I thought 2 years, and I could probably be out in 14 months. All right, I'll do it. But in the time I was waiting, from the time I said I'm guilty to the time I went to prison, I was trying to come up with something in my head why I was in prison, because I was not going to go on a prison yard and tell them I was in there for shoplifting. There's no way. Like, that's like a punk move, and I wasn't going to do it, And so, long story short, I ended up doing that, like I said, 14 months. Then I got out, and that's where I went into that lady's office. And that's when she said, you can do whatever you want to do. You've been doing this a long time. And I walked into the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, and I wasn't sure that I was going to stay there, but I was going to go there and listen, and I was going to get that secret that everybody talks about. And hopefully it only took about 2 weeks. I was going to get that secret, and then I wouldn't have to go to those meetings with all you losers anymore, because I always thought that I was really smart, and if I paid attention, I could listen and I could hear what's going on, and then I wouldn't have to do it. I wouldn't have to go to meetings. And what I found out was that going to meetings was a lifelong thing. And, the one thing that kept me coming back to meetings is I can remember I would walk into this meeting hall and I would grab a chair and I would take it to the farthest back corner. And I would sit in that corner where I could watch the door and the table at the same time. And I would listen, and they would go around the room and they'd say, would you like to share? And no, I don't want to share. I'm not sharing nothing with you guys. But I went every day. And like I said, 2 or 3 times a day, because I was trying to figure out a way to stay clean and sober and not have to go to meetings. And so I would listen, and I would hear things like get a sponsor, work the steps, keep coming back, all of this stuff we hear in meetings. And when they started talking about you have to find a higher power, I knew it wasn't for me. I knew that going to meetings, hanging out with these people wasn't for me, because I didn't believe in God when I got here. I didn't believe in a higher power when I got here. I always thought, even through all the treatment programs, I've been to 5 different treatment programs, and I always thought, if there was this loving, caring, higher power, why am I a junkie? Why do I do the horrible things that I do if there's a higher power who just loves me and cares for me? And so I made a decision that I wasn't going to do the higher power stuff, but I was willing to work the steps that didn't involve a higher power. And so there was a guy that went to meetings all the time. He's an old biker dude. And I watched him, man, and the dude was laughing all the time, and he was pretty spiritual. I could tell that he just had a good vibe about him, good program, had a lot of years, And I caught him after a meeting one night and I said, "Hey, Roy, going to meet me for coffee?" And the look of disgust on his face should have said it all, you know. But he was like, "Yeah, I guess. Where do you want to go?" And I said, "How about Village Inn?" And he said, "All right, I'll meet you there in 15 minutes." Well, I headed down there, you know, and got in a booth and sitting there waiting for him. And I seen him pull up on his bike, and I was like a little kid sitting in there, you know, sitting in that booth. And he comes walking up to the table and didn't sit down or nothing. He just looked at me and said, "What do you want?" And I said, "Well, I've been going to meetings, you know, a lot of meetings, and I heard that if you want to stay clean and sober, you got to get a sponsor. And so you're him. You're my sponsor." And he started laughing and he said, "Oh, is that right? I'm your sponsor, huh?" And I said, "Well, you're the one that I picked, you know." And so he sat down and he said, "I'm gonna be honest with you." He said, "I've been watching you in meetings too, and I don't think you got a snowball's chance in hell of staying sober." He said, "But we'll try it. We'll see." And I said, "All right," you know, and like I said, I was like a little kid sitting in this booth, and I'm like, "Yeah," you know, like almost wanting to clap my hands and shit. And I said, "All right, cool. What do you want me to do?" And he says, "Well," he said, "I want you to go home, go to bed, get up in the morning, make your bed, and go to work." And I'm like, "Is this dude fucking with me? Like, the fuck you? I don't want to clean my house, motherfucker. I want to stay clean. You know, I don't want to drink. I don't want to use." So I asked him, I said, why do you want me to do this?" He said, "Because that's what normal people do. They go home from work, they go to bed, they get up in the morning, they make their bed, and they go to work. If you can do that for a few weeks, maybe we could try this." Just like that parole officer told me, you know, it's up to you. For whatever reason, what he said to me stuck in my head. My fucking bed's made every day. Today, 21 years later, 7,801 days later, my bed is made every day because making my bed keeps me sober. Making my bed keeps needles out of my arm. Every day I do it.
There's actually a book. I want to say the name of the title is Make Your Bed If You Want to Save the World. It's something along those lines, but the big part of it is Make Your Bed. It's by a General McCraven. I think he was a Navy SEAL, and he talks about the importance of structure and how just start up every morning, make your bed. So, I mean, think about it. It's the first thing every military man does. Gets
Yeah.
up, makes his bed.
So first thing every prisoner does.
Yeah.
Gets up, makes your bed. You know, and I don't, you know, like I said, I didn't know, you know, shit when I got here. I knew that when we would walk outside the meeting hall and everybody be standing out on the sidewalk smoking, there was genuine laughter. I knew that, you know, hanging out with these people eventually became my life, you know, became the way that I did things. To this day, my friends are clean and sober. You know, I Roy was my sponsor for a long time, and we worked a lot of steps, and we worked a lot of traditions. And like I said, at that time, it was NA for me. And then I got in a motorcycle wreck. I was about 3 years clean, and started riding in a motorcycle club, and was headed home one night, and a little girl hit me head on. And
Was she using a car?
she was in one of them Chevy Tahoes, like a Blazer.
It's a big car.
She hit me head on and actually drove up on top of me, and I almost died. You know, I mean, it's a long story. And at this point, I told you that I still wasn't doing the higher power and God thing 3 years into this, you know, and I was using the group as my higher power, and then I got in this motorcycle wreck, and they got me to the hospital, and I woke up, and I didn't realize that I was in a hospital. I thought that this bike club was like had me in a warehouse, and and the lady that was working on me, that was helping me out, dude, she had earrings. You couldn't have put another earring in her ears. She had tattoos up and down her arms. And I thought, man, this fucking bike club is legit. Like, they've got a warehouse. They've got these fucking biker chicks taking care of me. Like, this is crazy. We'll come to find out that tattooed lady was my doctor. And the warehouse I was in with all the big windows was the emergency or the ICU unit. And I was in ICU for 30 days in a regular bed for 17 days. And during that time, somewhere in there, I found my higher power. And I've shared this for 21 years. I sat on a mountain and I talked to God. And I asked the questions that needed to be asked. And I wondered if I was dead. And my higher power told me he's not done with me yet, that I'm going to go on to do some things. And I got out of that hospital and I called my sponsor and I said, dude, you got to come to my house, man. I need to talk to you. And he said, I'm on my way, brother. And he come over and I told him the story about the higher power and what had transpired there. And he said, he gave me a big hug and he said, man, you had a spiritual experience. And from that day forward, my higher power guides me in my recovery. My higher power guides me in my living. You know, I've went on to marry the love of my life. I'm a manager of an oil field company, have 6 rigs. Me and my wife also own 2 coffee shops. Good things have come from recovery for me, and trusting in a higher power that truly is kind and loving, that guides me every single day. You know, on top of all of that, life that I lived to the life that I live today, I've met people in recovery through Zoom meetings of all things during that COVID shit. Started a 12-step meeting every Tuesday night. There's 5
Good
of
for
us.
you.
Yeah, there's 5 of us that got together and said, hey, man, let's do this. And they're all over the country, you know, Alabama, New York, Utah. We all got together, and every Tuesday night we have a 12-step, 12 tradition meeting. And we're actually celebrating 1 year next month of running this thing, and it's a packed house every night. Recovery has become my life. You know, I've been sober a long time, man. You know, I still work it like it's yesterday. You know, I still do what's suggested. I still have a sponsor who I work with all the time. I still sponsor guys that I work with all the time. I believe that there's a better way to live. I believe that, you know, through a 12-step program, that we can live a normal life. You know, I mean, I look back, you know, I mean, I say I own coffee shops, and it would blow your mind to know the amount of business we do at these coffee shops. Our coffee shops have won 2 years in a row, best of the best. We're fixing to go to an awards ceremony for best entrepreneur in our county. And, you know, it's
amazing what things can open up for us in sobriety.
It's absolutely insane, bro. It's absolutely insane if we apply what we learn in this program, and I don't give two shits if you go to AA or NA, I don't care. If you apply what you learn in this program, good things will happen. Good things will happen. You know, I got a sponsee who's one of those that my life is shit. Everything is shit. I fucking hate it. So I sit him down and I say, listen, make a list of every single thing that's fucked up in your life, everything. And then let's honestly work this program. And if you have not crossed off one of those things off of that list, maybe this program's not for you. You know, maybe it's not. Well, we've crossed off almost everything off that list. Things get better when we do better. You know, I sit on the board of directors for the drug court program in my county. That's a whole nother story. Let me tell you this real quick because it's kind of funny. So I get a phone call one day and I look at my phone and it says Sweetwater County prosecuting attorney. And I'm like, what the hell? You know? So I pick up the phone, of course. Hello. It's the deputy prosecuting attorney. And she's like, hey, I got your name from so-and-so. And we was wondering if you would be on the board of directors for the drug court program here. And I said, lady, do you know who you're talking to? Like, I'm a 7-time convicted felon. You know, I tore this town up. And she's like, exactly why we want you on there. We also know that at this time it was 20 years. We also know that you've got 20 years clean and sober, and we know what you do within the community. And we've done our homework, and we think that you would benefit this drug court program. You could shed some light on some things for us. And I was blown away. I was blown away. Like, it brought tears to my eyes to think that a guy like me would be doing things like this. And I often ask myself, you know, how did I get from there to here? How did I do it? You know, I did it one day at a time, man. One day at a time. I built a life worth living, you know, and you know, I'm honored that you asked me to do this with you. And really, I didn't think I was going to spew all that shit that I just spewed to you, but
Oh, I grab it out of you.
yeah, you know, I think that it's really important that people understand that this is a design for living, man. It's a design for living. And if you just follow the suggestions, just take a chance and follow them suggestions, man, you too can have a great life. You know, I want for nothing today. You know, I'm not saying that, you know, I don't want a Lamborghini, but my higher power don't see me in a Lamborghini. You know, so today I focus on what do I need? What do I need in my life? I need people like you, man, in my life. I need people who are doing the next right thing in my life today. You know, like I said, I married the love of my life. She's my best friend. And when God brought her to me, he knew, like, at that pivotal point in my recovery, I needed this woman. And she's a rock star too, man, you know. So I don't know, man, if I said anything at all that will help anybody, but you know, it sure as hell helped me. You know,
You
being
got
able
quite
to,
a story. You got quite a story, my friend.
yeah, you know, and we really did, you know, I tried to think like, man, I've done a handful of podcasts. I've sat in literally thousands of meetings. I've shared at conventions. I've shared my story. How do I skip 20 years of active addiction and then cram 20 years of active recovery into an hour? How do you do that? You know, and I still haven't figured it out yet because, you know, my story runs pretty deep. You know, I mean, people say, oh, you're from Wyoming. Like, like ride horses and dirt streets and shit out there, you know. Like I even had one person be like, "Where is Wyoming exactly?" Like, you know, I mean, like, fuck, you know. Oh man, I'm I'm just an addict and an alcoholic trying to live my best life today, man. You know, free and clean. That's it. That's all I want. You know, that's the I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but that shirt right there that I got in the shadow boxes of my very first recovery shirt.
Oh, cool.
I think I was like 3 months clean and sober, and I went to a convention with a bunch of guys, and I bought that shirt, and I've kept that shirt. And finally, we put it in a box and put it up there so that every time I look at it, I can remember. You know, and I sit right here in this chair on these Zoom meetings, you know, 3 maybe 4 times a week, so I get to see it all the time, you know, and I remember what it was like walking in them doors, looking around, thinking, God, you guys are a bunch of fucking losers, man. You know, you're gonna sit in here and bawl and tell each other all your deep dark secrets. Fuck, that ain't for me. Oh, it is for me. It is for me, you know. So I appreciate you having me on here.
Thank you. No, this has been an awesome interview. I really appreciate you taking the time. So let me ask you one last question. Do you have any advice for people watching and listening?
You know, I don't want to sound too cliche, you know. Don't give up before the miracle happens. Keep coming. I don't want to be that. My advice is if you're tired of living the way you're living, stick around. Stick around. Go through the pain. You know, get to know yourself. Figure out why. You know, my group of friends that I told you we started that meeting together, we call each other fuckheads. You know, why was I a fuckhead? You know, and the best advice ever is stick around, man. Stick around. It does get better.
Thanks for that. I really appreciate it. Some good advice you got there. So do you have anything else you want to throw in? I think it's been, like I said, a really good interview. You gave us a lot of info, and I really appreciate that. Let us inside your life.
No, you know, I just once again I appreciate you even asking if I would do this, you know, because when we get to share our experience, strength, and hope, you know, it's God work. You know, it's God helping us reach one person, just one, you know, and then that person will reach one person someday, you know, so on and so forth. So I just appreciate you asking me to be here.
No problem. It was an absolute pleasure. All right, my friend. So sit tight for me. And for everybody watching and listening, if you like what you saw and heard, go below and give us a like. Also, subscribe to see when we upload new videos. You can also check us out on all social media platforms such as Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Tumblr, you name it, we're on it. I also suggest checking out our website, www.addicts-anonymous.com. There you will find plenty of free resources as well as free literature. So that's all we have for today. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time.